Many people don't seem to appreciate how massive Siberia is, but as you can see on this map, the landmass of Siberia is so massive it covers nearly 77% of the whole of Russia. However, the size and extreme cold are not the only shocking thing about Siberia, as new discoveries in the place are proving. What have scientists discovered in Siberia? Should you be afraid? In this video, we bring you scientists' terrifying discovery frozen under Siberia. Most people won't choose to be in Siberia. In fact, the place was used as a punishment in Russia in the past. Thanks to its frigid temperature, it became the perfect place for the government to dump the people it didn't like. Siberia may refer to the Siberian Federal District of Russia, or Russian Siberia, but the broadest definition and most common use is the geographical region encompassing Siberia, which stretches from the Ural Mountains in the west to the Pacific Ocean in the east, and southward from the Arctic Ocean to the hills of north-central Kazakhstan and the borders of Mongolia and China. At 13.1 million square kilometers, Siberia covers more than 3/4 of Russia. It is 20 times the size of France and 50 times the size of the UK. In fact, Siberia has a larger land area than any other country on the planet and accounts for nearly 10% of the world's land area. Siberia comprises 77% of Russia's land area, but only 27% of its population, or slightly less than 40 million people. Living conditions in Siberia are harsh, and many young people frequently migrate to other parts of Russia or abroad, so the population is expected to decline gradually. Some say the name Siberia comes from the old Turkic word for sleeping land or beautiful land, while others say it means wild land, and still others say it comes from the Russian word server or north. Regardless of the origin of the name, Siberia remains a cold place that people are running away from. The Russians conquered the Khanate state of Siberia in the entire north of Asia, an area much larger than the old Khanate, which is known as Siberia in the 16th and 17th centuries. But what does the weather really look like in Siberia? You can say it's synonymous with the cold. Winter certainly lives up to its reputation because from November to February, the entire Siberia is blanketed in brutal snow, up to 80 centimeters deep. For a few months of the year, Lake Baikal is completely frozen, so you can not only walk there, but it is also common to drive on Baikal. Among the other places to visit in Russia, Siberia stands out for its weather challenges. In Siberia, the temperature drops to -40 degrees Celsius, and in some places it can reach -60 degrees Celsius, as in Oymyakon, the world's coldest permanently inhabited town. But that does not mean there is no summer in Siberia, only that it is only 3 months long and the temperature can reach 40 degrees Celsius, the region one of the world's most extreme temperature swings. No one appreciates summer quite like the people of Siberia. The majority of Siberians are Russians or Russified Ukrainians. Aside from them, Aboriginal groups make up about 1/20th of the population. The Buryats are the largest indigenous group in Siberia, with the majority living in their homeland, the Buryat Republic. Siberia cannot escape from its atrocious history. If you have heard of these terms before, Katorga, Silka, and Gulag, they are all terms associated with exile and forced labor camps in Soviet Russia, many of which were located in Siberia. Gulag was the governmental agency in charge of the Soviet forced labor camps, and it was the main instrument of political repression in the USSR. Katorga was the harshest punishment, usually a decade or more in prison under the forced labor, which often resulted in death. Silka or exile involved various types of banishment, such as requiring the victim to live in one of the towns in Siberia under police control. That is not to say there is nothing interesting in Siberia. In fact, scientists are drawn to the region because of the exciting natural features and discoveries lurking there, and some of these discoveries are shocking. For instance, scientists are drawn to Lake Baikal, which has multiple distinctions. You may hear the Baikal Sea. That is because of its massive size. The water body is technically only a lake. Lake Baikal is the world's deepest and oldest lake. If we could measure the depth of the lake from the top of the surrounding mountains to the bottom of it, it would be 12,977 meters. That is about 50% taller than Mount Everest. The lake also has the world's thickest bottom silt at 8,500 meters. The lake is also unique because it contains 20% of the world's total unfrozen freshwater reserves. And when the lake freezes over in the winter, an amazing phenomenon occurs. The ice becomes transparent, giving the appearance of turquoise ice. Siberia is an important asset to the Russian government, and the vast majority of Russian crude oil and natural gas originates in western Siberia, where natural reserves cover more than 2 million square kilometers. In fact, Russia can thank Siberia for being one of the world's largest natural gas exporters. But you would be surprised to hear how long scientists say humans have inhabited cold Siberia, and what exactly led scientists to this discovery. A pair of teeth. Scientists discovered a previously unknown population of ancient humans after discovering a pair of children's teeth lost 31,000 years ago in Siberia. During the Ice Age, these people lived in northeastern Siberia and were genetically distinct from other groups in the region, according to a new study. Makes you wonder how they survived the brutal cold with the modern comfort of thermal wear and home heating. The scientists examined genetic data extracted from the teeth as well as DNA from other ancient remains discovered in Siberia and central Russia. In doing so, they reconstructed 34 ancient genomes dating from 31,000 to 600 years ago, helping to solve the mystery of how Paleolithic humans spread across Siberia and then crossed the Bering Land Bridge into the Americas. The tiny teeth belonged to two unrelated male children and were discovered at the Yana Rhinoceros Horn Site, or RHS, on Siberia's Yana River. Despite the fact that Yana RHS contained thousands of artifacts, including stone tools, ivory objects, and animal bones, these teeth are the only known human remains at the site. The teeth and artifacts are the earliest evidence of human occupation in the region. The teeth are also the oldest Pleistocene human remains found at such high latitudes. Despite the fact that the Yana River site is in northern Siberia, DNA from the teeth revealed that these ancient northern Siberians were distinctly related to ancient hunter-gatherers from West Eurasia and likely arrived in Siberia shortly after Asians diverged from Europeans. Other Siberian populations that arrived later in the region, including those from which modern Siberians are descended, trace their origins to Eastern Asia. Humans are thought to have inhabited the high Arctic as early as 45,000 years ago, based on evidence such as cut marks on butchered mammoth bones. The authors of a new study estimated that the people of Yana diverged from other Eurasian people around 40,000 years ago. Ancient DNA can also provide fascinating glimpses into how the ancient North Siberians may have lived, as patterns of genetic diversity can provide information about population size and social organization, according to Sikora. The people of Yana may have lived in a group of up to 500 people, and there's no evidence of inbreeding in the children's genomes. The researchers determined that humans populated Siberia in at least 3 major migratory waves based on evidence from genetic data. The now extinct ancient North Siberians were the first to arrive in the West, followed by 2 migratory waves from Eastern Asia. The third of these waves was the Neo-Siberians, to whom many modern Siberians can trace their ancestors. People from 2 Eastern Asian groups intermarried with descendants of the North Ancient Siberians around 18,000 to 20,000 years ago. A partial skull discovered near Siberia's Kolma River around 10,000 years ago shows genetic similarities to ancient North Siberians and the East Asian group that became Native Americans' ancestors. This suggested that the previously unknown Siberian group was involved in the interbreeding that resulted in humans migrating to North America. We guess that is a piece of information many North Americans would prefer not to be aware of. If you were shocked by how long humans have lived in Siberia, wait until you hear the next discovery. In fact, feel free to panic as scientists revived zombie virus that remained frozen for 48,500 years in Siberia. A new study led by French National Center for Scientific Research microbiologist Jean-Marie Almpec examined samples collected from permafrost in the Russian province of Siberia. Scientists were able to awaken 13 new viruses dubbed zombie viruses from these, including one that remained infectious after more than 48,500 years in deep permafrost. Maybe scientists should slow down, right? The viruses studied were able to infect acanthamoeba, a microscopic single-celled living organism. Acanthamoeba was chosen as virus bait because they are only ubiquitous in soils and fresh and marine waters, but also in pools, taps, drains, aquariums, sewage, hydrotherapy baths, cooling systems, ventilators, intensive care units, to name a few. The findings suggested that a virus liberated from permafrost could pose a future risk to animal or human populations, especially in the face of unexpected rapid changes caused by the climate crisis. It is impossible to predict how long these viruses will be infectious after being exposed to outdoor conditions like UV light, oxygen, and heat, and how likely they will be to encounter and infect a suitable host during that time. However, the risk is bound to increase in the context of global warming as permafrost thawing accelerates and more people move to the Arctic as a result of industrial ventures. This virus was separate from another jumbo virus that was earlier discovered in Siberia by researchers from the same French institute. The ancient pathogen was discovered 30 meters underground in the frozen ground. It is classified as a giant virus known as the Pithavirus sibiquum. These are so large that they can be seen under a microscope, unlike other viruses. And this one, measuring 1.5 micrometers in length, is the largest ever discovered. The last time it infected anything was more than 30,000 years ago, but it has sprung back to life in the laboratory. It attacks amoebas, which are single-celled organisms, according to tests. The researchers warn that other, more deadly pathogens could be locked in Siberia's permafrost. According to the researchers, this region is under threat. In fact, they say it is a recipe for disaster. Permafrost has retreated and shrunk in thickness since the 1970s, and climate change projections indicate that it will shrink even further. It has also become more accessible, and its natural resources are being sought after. If we begin industrial explorations in Siberia, for example, people will begin to move around the deep permafrost layers. Those old layers will be penetrated through mining and drilling, and this is where the danger lies. A single infection of a mine worker can land the whole planet in trouble. A good example is smallpox, which we thought to have been eliminated worldwide. A dormant virus may become activated and transported where it can infect other humans. Away from viruses, scientists have been able to learn of a long-lost civilization in Siberia, thanks to a series of mummy discoveries in the frigid landscape. One of the mummies found at a site named Azan II belonged to the warrior nomads known as Scythians from the ancient Greeks and shows his painful death. His body and other mummies and findings have provided more details on the aspects of the Scythians' strange customs. The Scythians were a network of culturally similar tribes that ranged from Siberia to Egypt nearly 3,000 years ago and faded away around AD 100. The Scythians, never constituting an empire, are described as murderous nomads by the Greek historian Herodotus. Scientists say the slain warrior survived a deep arrows strike, and how he managed to survive, even for a short time, was miraculous. The triple-barbed arrowhead, which was most likely launched by an opponent on horseback, shattered bone below his right eye and became firmly embedded in his flesh. Studying the body, it was apparent the man's injury was not his first brush with death. He survived a sword blow to the back of his skull when he was younger, but this last injury was different. The man was probably begging for death. The researchers paint a picture of a crude operation that took place 2,600 years ago on the Siberian steppes, holding the victim's skull in one hand and a replica of the deadly arrow in the other. Thin cuts on the bone show how his companions cut away his cheek, then attempted to remove bone fragments with a small saw, but were unsuccessful. In a final futile attempt to free the arrowhead, an ancient surgeon smashed into the bone with a chisel. The man died hours or a day later. Researchers were also taken aback when they discovered a grave mound containing the bodies of 26 men and women, the majority of whom had apparently been executed in order to follow the ruler into the afterlife. Tough luck. One woman's skull had been pierced 4 times with a war pick, and another man's skull still had splinters from the club that had been used to kill him. The grave also contained the skeletons of 14 horses, but more impressive was the discovery of 5,600 gold objects, including a 3-pound necklace and a cloak studded with 2,500 small gold panthers. Not quite as spectacular was another burial tomb. It contained a mummy of a warrior in full regalia, his body partially mummified by the frozen ground. Scientists felt they hit the jackpot, as the mummy was discovered intact, complete with his clothes, weapons, tools, and even the metal intended to sustain him in the afterlife. He was interred alongside 2 horses in full harness, slaughtered and arranged facing northeast. Mongolia's president led the team his personal helicopter to transport the discoveries to a lab, and the mummy's body was in Germany for a year and his clothes and equipment were in a lab in Russia. The warrior had lain for more than 2,000 years on ice lands, a sheet of ice formed by water seeping through the grave and freezing against the permafrost below his grave was opened. The mummy had been dehydrated or dissected by the ice in the grave. These Scythian mummies show signs of primitive embalmings, such as internal organs being removed and replaced with grasses. But the combination of ice and intentional preservation produced specimens that were remarkably resilient. The mummy's teeth are surrounded by pitted bone, indicating painful gum disease caused by a diet high in meat and dairy but low in fruits and vegetables. When he died, he was between 60 and 65 years old, slim and only 5 feet 2 inches tall. He had broken his left arm at some point, possibly in a fall. Years of pounding in the saddle have caused osteoarthritis in his vertebrae. Arm and shoulder joints that are badly worn attest to heavy use. This type of osteoarthritis and joint damage is common among people that work with wild horses. Beginning around 800 BC, the Scythians swept across the Central Asian steppes, and within a few generations, their art and culture had spread far beyond the Central Asian steppes. Exploits of the Scythians terrified the ancient Greeks and Persians. Herodotus described their violent, brutal practices, which included human sacrifice, which the Arzen II discovery confirms, and drug-fueled rituals. He imagined they came from the mountains to the east, in the land of the gold gardening griffins. You don't want to have them as neighbors. But that is not all the shocking discoveries in Siberia. Scientists have actually discovered a meteorite in Siberia that contains naturally impossible crystals. They discovered a small grain of extraterrestrial mineral in a box obtained from the Italian Museum of Natural History in Florence, Italy, that formed shortly after the birth of our solar system 4.5 billion years ago. The mineral originated in an area near the Koryak Mountains in eastern Siberia and was delivered to Earth by a meteorite known as the Katerka. The latter was only discovered after researchers returned to the area in 2011 to search for more exotic minerals. Because of its unique structural properties, this new rock has been designated as a quasi-crystal. On the outside, a quasi-crystal resembles a regular crystal, but the inside is noticeably different. The atomic lattices inside the quasi-crystal are both ordered and diverse, displaying a range of shapes never before seen in a natural substance. Between 1982 and the present, laboratories produced over 100 synthetic versions of these minerals. Such a form of matter had never been seen before and was previously thought to be theoretically impossible, according to accepted ideas about natural laws. Previously, the only things discovered were crystals, which had rigidly repetitive patterns, and so-called normal solids, which are made up of atoms arranged in any order. The quasi-crystal sample was discovered in a box from an Italian museum by Paul Steinhardt. He and a team confirmed the tiny rock's unique structure from Siberia. They were able to establish with near certainty that it had arrived on Earth from somewhere else in the solar system. Steinhardt's analysis revealed that the mineral was embedded in stishovite, another mineral. This rock is derived from meteorites, and his encirclement of a quasi-crystal indicated that both minerals were formed by high-pressure process at roughly the same time inside a meteorite that eventually landed in the wilds of Siberia. The discovery of the ratio of oxygen isotopes inside the quasi-crystal was not consistent with ratios found on Earth, could only be explained if the quasi-crystal was created off-planet added weight to their conclusion. Of course, because quasi-crystals are so small, finding them is like looking for a needle in a haystack, and the most recent sample was only discovered 5 years after the meteorite sample was removed from Siberia. Aluminum, copper, and iron were discovered to be present in all three quasi-crystals. The third discovered quasi-crystal has a unique structure that has yet to be synthesized in a laboratory, highlighting nature's persistent habits of producing more novelty than we expect or even imagined. Speaking of meteorites, scientists have discovered new facts about the meteor that blasted millions of trees in the early 19th century. The highly destructive event that puzzled researchers for more than a century. Meanwhile, the new explanation for the massive explosion that shook the remote Siberian forest in 1908 is even stranger than the mysterious event itself. The event, dubbed the Tungsten event, flattened more than 80 million trees in seconds over an area nearly 800 square miles or 2,000 square kilometers, but incredibly, no crater was left. Many believe the culprit was a meteor that exploded before impacting the ground. However, after exploding, a comet or asteroid would most likely have left behind rocky fragments, and no smoking gun remnants of a cosmic visitor has ever been discovered. A group of researchers has now proposed a solution to this long-standing mystery: a large iron meteor hurled toward Earth, getting close enough to cause a massive shockwave, but the meteor then curved away from our planet without breaking up, its mass and momentum propelling it further into space. On the morning of June 30th, 1908, the sky above Siberia flared so brightly and hotly that a witness standing dozens of kilometers away thought his shirt had caught fire. According to Vladimir Perev, co-author of the new Tungsten study and a research at the Russian Academy of Sciences PN Lebev Physical Institute in Moscow, the bright light was followed by an explosion that smashed windows and knocked people off their feet in a town more than 35 miles or 60 kilometers away. Another witness said that the sky was split in two and the entire northern part of the sky appeared covered in fire above the forest. According to NASA, the energy released by the blast was later estimated by scientists to be 185 times greater than the atomic bomb that dropped in Hiroshima in 1945. Initial explanations for the blast included volcanic eruptions and mining accidents, but those claims were not supported by physical evidence. Other later suggestions were more speculative, such as crashed UFO or a black hole colliding with Earth. The most widely accepted scientific explanation is that a rocky asteroid or comet entered Earth's atmosphere and then disintegrated with a bang 3 to 6 miles or 5 to 10 kilometers above the ground. However, such an explosion should have strewn about rocky debris, which was never discovered. In comparison, a meteor that exploded over Russia in February of 2013 was discovered in fragments within a week. The researchers decided to take a different approach. What if the meteorite was made of iron instead of rock? Could a massive iron meteor graze Earth's atmosphere, generating a powerful shock wave, then yank free of all the planet's gravitational pull and escape without fragmenting? To put that theory to test, the scientists used computer modules to calculate meteor paths. They examined small objects at 164 feet or 50 meters across as large as 656 feet or 200 meters. The objects were made of rock, ice, or iron, and they approached the Earth's surface at a trajectory of 6 to 10 miles or 10 to 15 kilometers. The calculations revealed that space bodies made of rock and ice would completely disintegrate under the enormous pressures generated by their passage through tropospheric altitudes. Only asteroids made of iron with a diameter greater than 100 meters or 328 feet can survive without being cracked and fragmented into many separate pieces. The Tunguska meteor was estimated to be between 328 and 656 feet, or 100 and 200 meters in diameter, and traveled at approximately 45,000 miles per hour, or 72,000 kilometers per hour through Earth's atmosphere. The meteor would have lost some of its mass during its fiery passage. Iron shed by a meteor traveling at such high speeds would have escaped as gas and plasma, oxidized in the atmosphere, and then dispersed on the ground, becoming nearly indistinguishable from terrestrial iron oxides. Previous research has calculated the power of shock waves produced by meteors based on the object entering Earth's atmosphere at a very steep angle and either hitting the ground or exploding in midair. But the case of Tunguska's meteor, the iron-rich space object may have entered Earth's atmosphere at a very shallow angle, approximately 9 to 12 degrees tangential to the surface. It would have then grazed through the atmosphere, producing a shock of an altitude of 6 to 10 miles, capable of flattening trees for hundreds of kilometers and scorching the surface. However, due to the meteor's mass and momentum, it did not break up and instead exited the atmosphere and returned to space. Let's hear what you think about these discoveries in Siberia in the comments section below.